So yesterday we began to answer. One second. Yesterday we began to answer the questions that the Rebbe asked about the differences, to try to explain the differences and the reasons behind the differences of the sending of the scouts that Moses sent out and the sending of the scouts that Joshua sent out 40 years later. The scouts that Moses sent out was a failure, right? The scouts came back and said, we can't go into the land of Israel, and convinced the Jewish people not to go in. And God said, you don't want to go in, so you're not going to go in. They wandered around for 40 years, 1 year for each day that they were in Israel. But the scouts that Joshua sent in were successful. Okay, so the scouts that Moses sent in were 12, and they went out in public. And when they came to the land of Israel, they stayed there for 40 days, and they wandered around openly. They weren't concealing anything. And when they came back, it was a big failure. But when Joshua sent out, and also another thing was that Moses was not commanded by God to send these spies out. God said, if you want to do it, it's up to you. If you want to send them out on your own, but it's up to you, God said to Moses, which is not the case. The spies of Joshua, even though it's not written clearly in the Torah, but it can't be that Joshua sent them on his own. He wouldn't make the same mistake as Moses did. So it must be that the spies that Joshua sent out, God told him to send. And also it doesn't say the names of who they were, the spies. And the spies were also sent out secretly. He did not tell the Jewish people. And when the spies came back, the spies of Joshua, they didn't tell everybody like the spies of Moses did. They just came back and they spoke to Joshua alone. And they didn't spend 40 days. They spent only a few hours in the land of Israel. And they didn't go in and scout out the whole place. They just got to the edge of Israel. They just went into the very, very edge of Israel. So the Rebbe says, well, the reason was, we learned this yesterday, the reason was because there's a big difference between the spies of Joshua and the spies of Moses. Their modus operandi, that's a word, I don't know. Anyway, their whole, both of them had the same goal in general, to settle the land of Israel. But the scouts that Moses sent in were to inspire, excite the people. They get the people more aroused and interested in the beauty and the bounty and the blessing of the land of Israel. So Moses sent out these 12. The Jews were certain of victory. At least when they sent out the scouts, they were certain of victory. They knew that God was with them. They knew that God had controlled the world. God took them out of Egypt. They knew it. But what Moses just wanted to, the people asked Moses, we'd like to know a little bit more about the land of Israel. We wouldn't want to go in this like a blind date, blind date. Let's find a little bit out about okay, we've been promised the land of Israel. It's a promised place. We know it's good, but we only heard about it. Let's send representatives. So therefore they sent 12, one for each of the 12 tribes, so that each one of them would come back and explain in a language and in a manner that their tribe, because the natures of each one of the tribes was different, and in the way that would explain to them and encourage them how beautiful the land is and what they saw and how wonderful it was going to be going in there. Everybody would really excited, and they would go in with no, reservations whatsoever, right? Which is not the case the spies of Joshua. The spies of Joshua went in for one reason and one reason alone: to conquer the land of Israel. To conquer. They weren't there to inspire anyone. There wasn't a travel, what is it, a touring company, what do they call it, a travel company, a travel agent. They weren't travel agents coming back and telling. They were going for one sincere, how do you say, sinister, you want to call it, reason, to undermine to take over the land. To take over the land. How to do it? How to take over the land of Israel was promised. The land of Israel was promised to them. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that God promised the land of Israel to the Jews, and he didn't give it to them. They had to take it. They had to fight for it. It says Joshua went in, he fought 7 years. 7 years against all the enemies, clean out the place. Very strange, huh? Very strange story. Why did God make us work? The answer is because that's the purpose of the world, is to work, that we're here to work. God promised that he'll be with us and etc., but we have to do it on our own. We have to do it on our own. No one can bring forgiveness for you. No one can bring success for you. You have to do it yourself. You can get help. You can get blessed. You can do this. You have to do it yourself. Okay. Therefore, it says, Shalach lacha anashim. Yeah, okay. For this reason, all the 12 tribes, because the 12 spies, they went and they scouted out the whole land of Israel. The whole land of Israel they wanted to scout, because they wanted to come back with a good report and really impress everyone. Really impress everybody, give a good impression. The Torah thoughts, therefore they went to the length and the width of the land of Israel for 40 days, 40. Not in a way that God could have sent these spies out, that each one went separately. The Chelik Museum, each person could go to his special place in the land of Israel that's relevant to their tribe or another tribe. Didn't make any difference. They could go and one could say, okay, I went to this area of Israel and I checked it out. And listen, I want to tell you, there was beautiful mountains and rivers, valleys, fertility. You can't imagine it. Just the most beautiful place. Okay, that's my area. Next, where did you go? I went to the southwest corner. There, it's warm. It's pleasant. The night times are very good. Okay, now I went to the southeast corner. Each one would go to his place. Instead of it taking 40 days, it would have taken 1/12 of the time. As it was, but why did they all go together? Why? To Kiev and since Shalichut, that the going of these 12 tribes was in order that each one would come back and validate all of the others and convince his tribe as well, that he saw with his own eyes, all the time that the land of Israel was not divided up to the 12 tribes. That was done. Joshua came into the land of Israel, 7 years he fought, and 7 years they divided the land up. So until the land was divided and each tribe took his place and settled there and built houses and everything, it wasn't known exactly where is the place of each and every tribe. Because the portions were known, but who gets which portion wasn't known. This was decided by means of lots later on. It's going to say later on. We're going to later on. Shenemar, like it says, Karl the Sov, says that near the end of the 40th years, says, Ach begorel yechalek oretz, says, but the land of Israel will be divided up by lots. But the actual, it was after the land was conquered by means of Joshua, 7 years of conquering. Then all the 12 tribes, all the 12, the heads of the tribes, at the Tur La'oretz Kulo. So therefore, they all 12 had to go together. That by means of this, everyone knew that he would see his portion of the world of Israel. If Moses would have sent the 12 tribes separately, then each one would have come back and told about the portion that he saw, but it wouldn't necessarily be the portion that they were going to receive. So, for instance, the emissary from the tribe of Ephraim, he would come back and he would say, I saw this portion of the land that was very beautiful, but his constituents of Ephraim wouldn't know if that was their part. So therefore, Moses sent out the 12 scouts all together, that for sure when they came back, that each one would be able to tell his constituents, the tribe that he came from, about the whole land of Israel. The whole thing was good. And in that whole was also your part. And therefore Moses sent the 12 scouts in a way that was advertised publicly. And it certainly was not done in a way that was, how do you say, is secret. Goes without saying about letting everybody know about it, that they were being sent. But Kivan Shekavana, since the whole reason that Moses sent his scouts out was Yagido ben Israel, that to come back and report good things about the land of Israel, the Samech Libam, to make them happy, and they'll go into the land of Israel with tremendous desire. That was one reason. But they went publicly also, also to let the people, the dwellers of Canaan, to know, that not only that they did not conceal themselves like usual spies do, that they tried to mix in with the populace, right? They disguise themselves in order to hear what everybody is saying, and etc. But in their thought and lakir, and that no one should know that really they're afraid from the enemy. That's a spy. A spy goes in and he spies out and he tries to act like everybody else because, in fact, the ones who sent him, they're afraid. They want to know what the enemy has. So therefore, they send spies in secret. Right? You can imagine a spy coming out. He's got a big ring with whatever is the communist signature on it, and whatever it is. He's got what is the red book of Mao Zedong? He's opening it up all the time, and he's saying, "Who are you? I'm a spy." Right? A spy. They'll throw him in jail. But that's exactly what the Jews did. The Jews went in and they advertised the fact that we're from the Jewish people and we have come to survey the land of Israel, to take it over. Why? Because they were not sent to spy out the land of Israel. They were sure of victory. Lo chashashu lo orer tzumas lev. So they didn't care about arousing the attention of the people that were there. And therefore, they all walked together, one big group of 12 unusual people walking together. They were sure to be noticed. They went there only for one purpose, and that was to find out how good the land of Israel was. That everyone would see the part of the land of Israel that was going to be relevant to their tribe. Or it's just like they knew that the conquering of the land was going to be by means of God, not in a natural way, just like they got out of Egypt in an unnatural way. God split the sea in an unnatural way, right? He gave them bread from heaven, unnatural way. So they also knew that God, they knew that they were going to conquer the land, and also their mission that they did to scout out the land wasn't going to be natural. They weren't worried, lo chashash, they weren't worried for any danger. But actually God made a miracle that God made a miracle that in fact it was unnatural. God made a miracle that all the people of the Canaanites would all be occupied in burying their dead. All of a sudden everybody, the people were supposed to die, died exactly the time when the scouts came in. But so therefore the scouts that Moses sent out, they had no worries. They went in only to find out how good it was because they were going to take it over. They were sure. Which is not the case. The scouts, the spies of Joshua 40 years later, since they're sending them, was not to see the good of the land of Israel. They already knew how good the land of Israel was from the scouts of Moses. Why did Joshua send in the scouts? Al derech v'dugma kol haboim lilachem ba'eretz, a person that comes to make a war against an enemy, but derech hateva naturally has to know some of the secrets of the enemy. You have to have what do they call information from the enemy. What is it called? Sometimes words just jump out of my mind. Intelligence. That's right. Intelligence. They have to have intelligence that goes and scouts out the place. Look, and therefore, Yishlach Yoshua, Joshua sent only 2 people. Meraglim Cherish, and they were spies, secret spies. Only 2, not 12. And he didn't send, it says, Anashim. He sent out people. Lo Nasi Israel, he didn't send out the heads of the tribes. Kivin Shetzarach B'Yud Beit Nasiim, he had to have 12. The only reason that there were the 12 leaders were in order to let the Jewish people know the good of how good the land is. And they already knew that. But in order to spy out the land, it was better that there was only the smaller amount, 2, and not 12. Anashim, and regular people, not the heads of the tribes. And Meraglim, they had to go in secret. It had to be that they were spies. Whether regarding the Jewish people did not have to know that these spies were going in. And mutab, and it's better that the Jews shouldn't know, so that no one won't get out. Won't get out of the ki'im sarei tzava. He sent like heads of the warriors. Sent out Pinchas, it says, was one of them. Shetzorich the horos derech shalelchubo. You just have to know the ways that you should go, how you should go, where you should attack from. How much more so they were the dwellers of Canaan shouldn't know. They had to conceal themselves. So what do we see? That Joshua sent out his spies for a totally different reason. Joshua wasn't so sure of victory. Joshua wanted to hear it clearly that they were going to be victorious. And it ended up he just sent the spies in, and they heard from this woman who owned the house where they were in that everyone was afraid. And he said, that's enough. All we had to do is just hear that the people are afraid. That's enough. The people of Canaan were afraid. Because Sheshamam, when they heard the words of Rachav, Yadati, I know, Ki Natan Hashem, that I know that God has given you the land of Israel, because because your fear has fallen on us, and it will melt all of the people of the land in front of you, and our hearts are all like melting. We're all weak. Nobody has strong-hearted in the whole land of Canaan. They're all afraid. No one has the courage to stand before you. As soon as they heard this from Rachav, then they didn't have to go to the streets of the city to hear Mami Pinei Brias, to hear what people were saying. That was enough for them. And after they were they hid 3 days in a mountain. They came into Israel. They stayed there only for a few hours, and then they ran away. They ran away to the mountains. And the people that heard about them were running after them, trying to get them, because there was only 2 of them. So they hid in the mountains. This chazru, they came back to Joshua and they said, Ki natan Hashem biyadenu, God has put into our hands the whole entire land. And everyone there is afraid of us. Kivin shenit malei shlichotam, they finished their job. Alpiza, according to this, Metoretzet can be answered also to Mia Klolis, a general wonder question you can ask in the this whole story. Now, let me just repeat again. It is a very good thing to ask questions in the Torah. And it's also a very good thing to make up your own answers in the Torah. But the best thing of all is to realize that your answers could be and probably are wrong. But it's good to have answers. Don't be satisfied with the answers that you invent or make up. Even though you think you have good results to it, that's the idea of all the commentaries on the Torah. That's why it's so necessary, the commentaries of the Torah. Because you see a lot of times the commentaries of the Torah, they even disagree with one another, which that's okay. It doesn't have to be that your commentary is, your answers to the questions are like everybody else. It could be that they're different, but they have to be based on something valid. They have to be based on something valid. And therefore, it's a good thing to ask questions in the Torah. Exactly the opposite. If you don't have questions in the Torah, then it's a sign that maybe you're not really interested that much. Maybe you're not that interested much. right? What is written in the Torah, you should not take at face value. That's the idea of the rabbis of the Talmud. The rabbis of the Talmud are there to encourage you to ask questions and to encourage you even more to see what answers they came up to the same question with the same questions, and see why their answers are probably more valid than yours are. It could be you also have a valid answer to the questions. The questions are very valuable in the Torah. Okay, so according to this, now we can answer a very basic question that we have with the spies, the scouts of Moses. It's explained in a lot of places about the malatam shalom raglim, of the high quality of the integrity of and the courage, etc., of the scouts that Moses sent. Moses sent 12, the top of the top. Brave, intelligent, right? Everything a human being, the best qualities of humanity were in these 12 people. Kamafurish, like it says, Kulam Anashim, all of them were important people at that time, and all of them were perfect. Roshev El Ben Israel, they're the heads of the thousands of Israel. Shenivchar Mikol Shar Ben Israel, they were chosen from all the rest of the Jewish people. Mina Barurim Shebachem, Mina Sulta Shebachem, from the choice Jews were there, the greatest leaders, the people that had the greatest, how do you say, levels of honesty and conscience and everything. They were very high level, and they didn't want, as I said, that we just finished learning in Lakuti Torah. What do we learn? That in a way was their problem. They were so high, so spiritual, that they didn't want to bring themselves down to actually do commandments. To dry down the infinite essence of God in this physical world. They didn't want agriculture and fighting battles, all these other things that are commandments. They didn't want to do. They wanted to stay in the desert. Shabon, that in the desert, that the main thing they did was learning Torah. And the Torah was given in a desert. In such a situation, that they didn't have to work in the world. They didn't have to plow. They didn't have to plant. They didn't have to protect themselves. They didn't have to worry about the kids running into the streets or getting run over by a chariot or something like that. Right? Everything was perfect. To such a degree, when they were in the desert, even after they all sinned, right? They said, we don't want to go in the land of Israel. Namar, it says, there's one opinion that says that the whole generation of Jews, that they didn't want to go into the land of Israel, that they lost their portion in the world to come. Why? Because their level was higher than the world to come. They didn't need it. They didn't need to go to heaven. Therefore, for them, going to heaven wouldn't be a reward for them. They didn't want to come down because they didn't want to go up, because up to them was not up. They were at the highest level possible. They were in the desert. They were seeing God's miracles all the time. God was protecting them. They were sitting and learning the Torah directly. There was no disturbances, no telephones, nothing whatsoever. There was unity among the people. They were all friendly and everything. They wanted to stay in the desert. There's nothing greater than that. If so, if they were such high people, ain't a moving, it's not understood. After the Torah explains to us the great highness, how can it possibly be that the outcome from sending these scouts actually, not because of what was the intention, was the results were total bad. Such good intentions, 12 of them, it's not just one person, was totally bad. How could it be totally bad? How could it be totally bad? It doesn't make any sense. Huh? Yeshlamor, we can say, Alpi Amor Leil, what we said before, Shegam b'poel actually hayata to'eled ratzui mishloach hamoraglim. The fact is that the outcome that God cursed the Jewish people and he wanted to wipe them all out, and he was very angry. And Moses said, "Have mercy on the people." And God said, "Okay, you know what? They'll get their wish. They'll wander around in the desert for 40 years. They won't go into the land of Israel." That's what's going to happen to them. That's a terrible thing. They could have gone into Israel 40 years or earlier, right? 30, 39 years or whatever earlier. They could have gone into the land of Israel earlier. And then the whole thing would have been, not only that, they would have gone in, they would have been holy, they would have seen the miracles of God, right? It would have been a whole different nation, a whole different attitude. But that's not what happened. That's what happened. This terrible curse of an outcome, they had to wander for 40 years, it came. So the Rebbe said, okay, but how could they have made such a terrible mistake? How could there be such a terrible outcome from such wonderful, pure people? And it wasn't just one or two, it was all 12. I mean, 10 of the 12. 10 of the 12 disagreed. 10 of the 12 said we can't go in. How could they have made such a big mistake? So the Rebbe said, well, the fact of the matter is something good came out of it. It wasn't totally bad outcome. Why? Because when they came back, now you should know that's a basic thing in Chabad, and it's a basic thing in creation, to try to find something good, some redeeming factor in everything. Everything has some redeeming factor. A lot of these things only Moshiach is going to be like, what's the redeeming factor of the Holocaust? What's the redeeming? So, okay, Moshiach is going to come and explain it. He's going to have a lot of explaining to do. Okay, but nevertheless, there must be something good in everything, because everything comes from God, and God is totally good. So it must be something good inside of it. Must be. Says the Rebbe. Now I'm going to give you an example. The Jewish people went against God. They said, we're not going to go into the Holy Land. Biggest mistake you could possibly make. And God got really angry, and they had to wander 40 years in the desert. Terrible punishment. God was really angry. How did such a terrible thing come from such good people? Said the Rebbe, listen, it wasn't so terrible, the outcome. It wasn't so terrible. It wasn't totally bad. Let's look at that 1/100% of good that did come out of this whole business. Let's look at that. Good, the bad we know. The bad, there's no problem seeing the bad. And in fact, it was worse than we think. But let's put that aside for 1 second. There's something good came out of it. That's how we should look at the world. Not to be fools, not to say that bad things are good. No. But don't let the bad totally conceal the good. Let's see what good came out of this whole, debacle. How do you pronounce that word, by the way? Debacle or debacle? They're saying it all the time. I'll look it up later. I always thought it was a debacle. Kibeshuvam, when the scouts came back and they said, Banu el Eretz, we came back from the land, Shalachtanu, that we have been sent. V'gam zavat halav it is flowing milk and honey. V'zeh preya, and this is its fruits. Yadu, they knew, Kol Yisrael, the Jewish people knew clearly and certainly, b'vadaut, the lo rak ba'ofen shel amuna, not just in a way of faith, they believed in what God said. They all saw with their own eyes, tovat umalat oretz, how good and how excellent the land of Israel is. V'yadia zu, in this knowledge, ho'ila b'pol, and it had an effect when, after the 40 years, when they actually did go in and conquer the land. B'nogei l'kivush b'kanisa le'eretz zman Yeshua, in the days of Joshua. She'alu b'simcha, then they went with great joy, u'b'chefetz gadol, and with a tremendous desire. Al smach divra meraglim, because of the words of the spies, scouts that Moses sent in 40 years earlier, that the land was good, that was human beings saw with their own physical eyes. Even deeper, according to the, let's say, the spiritual aspect of the things. When Moses sent out the scouts to survey the land of Israel, they did a very great thing. What? Not just something that the results were 40 years later. It says, Ba'oto Shah, at that time when they were sent out, when it says that of all these scouts that Moses sent out, that they were the top of the Jewish people. This was the actual beginning and going into the land of Israel by means of all the Jewish people. It was the first time that a member of the nation, the Jewish nation, set foot in the land of Israel. Before that, there was Abraham was there, Yitzchak was there. Yitzchak never left. But that wasn't the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation began in Egypt. When Yaakov and his sons went down to Egypt, that was the beginning of the Jewish nation. And the Jews were there as slaves for 210 years. And they had never been in the land of Israel. They'd never been a Jew from the Jewish nation in the land of Israel. These were the first Jews from the people from the Jewish people to set their feet in the land of Israel. This scouts. Huh? That's a big accomplishment. Yeshlo, see if we can add on and even make it sweeter. Shebachalalos, and the old general idea of conquering the land and going into the land of Israel, and especially sending these scouts in, this is stressed the idea of birur atachton, refining the physical world. The Inyan Zen, this is stressed, and this is underlined. Be'aliyah, be'simcha, be'chafetz gadol, that the Jews went in with great joy 40 years later, ketotza, as a result of the scouts of Moses, shara'u tovat ha'oretz v'inyanim masar. In other words, 40 years later, Joshua said, listen, there were Jews from the Jewish people, the greatest of the great. They broke the ice. They went into the land of Israel. Let's forget about what happened. They went into the land of Israel and they saw how great the land is. And everybody said, yeah, that's right. We read about that they came back. They had a simcha. Now the Jews had a great desire. Lo rak mipnei amuna, not just in faith in God. There were actual Jews from the Jewish people 40 years earlier that actually saw Ani Amarti, not just to believe that God said it was good, Ella Gam Mitzad Takton, that people, Jews, said the land was good. But afterwards, they added all sorts of things that we can't go. Yesh Lomer, we can say that this is also hinted at what Rashi said at that time, that these scouts that Moses sent in, they were all kosher. They were all 100% good. Kosher, it doesn't say that they were tzaddikim. Kosher is the first letters of kamotze shalal rav, like finding great spoils of war. Shalal, spoils of war. This is, first of all, something which was in the hands of the enemy and your opposition. The nilkach, and we took it away with a war. Kosher means kamotze shalal rav, that we now have the power to take away the great spiritual riches which were in the hands of our enemies. Ubazeh gufa kamotze shalal. It's like finding spoils. And often shalmatzia, we never dreamed it would be like this. A matzia, you walk down the street, you find whatever it is, a golden bar or a diamond or something like that. You never suspected it would be there. And a shalal, the spoils that the Jews were going to take from the land of Israel, were lo be'erich lavodaso. It wasn't comparable to what they did. I just walked down the street, right? I wanted to take a walk. Took a walk. All of a sudden, I saw a diamond laying in the street. I had to do something. I had to take the walk. I had to look down, right? But I found this. I had to do the same thing. The Jews, they were going to go into the land of Israel. They had to do something. They had to fight, right? But the treasures that they were going to give is hinted at in the word kosher, kamotze shalal rav, like finding a big. This is in the Psalms, in Psalm 119, right? King David said that the commandments in the Torah, learning the Torah and doing commandments is like finding great spoils. Shalom Rabbah, great spoils. Ribu Gadol, that there's nothing greater than it. In other words, the reward for going into the land of Israel was going to be comparable to anything they'd ever known before. The Zeh were remez. That's the hint at what it said. In that time, they were kosher. What does it mean? The whole idea was the whole idea why Moses sent in spies, scouts, to survey the land of Israel in the beginning, and when they went in, the Kanisa La'aretz, the Kol B'nai Israel, this opened up the door for all of them, made the first crack, the opening, that all the Jewish people would be able to go with great joy and with great certainty. This is Birur Atachton. This would be refining the physical world in a way that God wants, and that would give God an amazing pleasure. And they had never done this before. It's never been done before. The Jewish people, regular, normal people, would give God pleasure. This is Motzi Shalol Rav. This is like finding tremendous spoils. The first letter of kosher. That's what it means. These scouts were kosher. They had the ability to bring out the amazing spoils that were going to be from the war of defeating the 31 kings, whatever that were in Israel. Shazui Klolos, that's the whole general service of us, me and you right now, especially going to the land of Israel, to us, that from Israel will be refined the whole entire world. The whole entire world will be a dwelling for God in this physical world. Now, the 41 kings that were in Israel, they were all religious people. They were all idolaters, but they were religious. They all had their religions, and they were successful. They conquered the land of Israel. They were there. And God said, good, we're going to put an end to it. We're going to put an end to it. The success of evil is not real success. We want the world to taste true success, not just the Jews. The true success is not making yourself happy. True success is making God happy. And making God happy can only come by doing what God wants, even though you don't understand what it is. And just to show you the point, here we got the land of Israel is given to the Jews, and it's a tremendously fertile land. Fertile land. Unusual. Unusual. Says that's only a little taste of what you're going to get physically, of what you're going to get spiritually. That by means of this is the true idea of the mission of the Jewish people in this world, Motzei Shalol Rav, to bring out the hidden treasures in this world, but you have to fight. You have to fight mainly against yourself, against your own urges. Kedei la'kafia sitra achra, in order to control your feeling of separateness. This hapach, and transform the darkness of the world to light. Sheyair, the infinite light of God should shine in this place of darkness and this place of separateness of the whole entire world together. The other world, I'm sorry, I thought it was a chet. V'yeter seit, v'yeter is even more power and more energy than it is even in heaven. That's what's called a better type of light that comes from darkness. And this was begun by the scouts that Moses sent in. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow.